Welcome back! In my last video, I shared how sketchbooking was just not a thing for me because I didn't think that it was a productive part of my practice. But now I realize that it's absolutely one of the most essential parts of my creative practice, and it's now how I make zines. Let's get into it. I created this zine for my old self, for the outdoorsy, curious person who lives in a city, who doesn't own a pair of hiking shoes, but maybe has an old ratty pair of Doc Martens and wants to learn how to hike. A person who thinks that they would feel most at peace in the forest, but simultaneously feels the most afraid of getting eaten by a bear or some terrible thing happening to you in the forest. I see your anxiety and I bring you something to help solve it. With my recent jump into the world of makers, aka artisan or artist table markets, I am realizing how much fun I can have making products of my own work. I used to just sell originals of my art in galleries. I never really thought about selling prints or stickers or zines, and now everything has changed for me. What I love about this format is that it's informal. It allows me to be both a teacher and an artist, and I can kind of combine all of the different things that make me really passionate about creativity all in one place. Another thing that I love about zines is that they're just not precious. And I think too often art objects, prints, all of those things feel like these really, really precious things that we need to hold not just dear, but make sure that we're protecting in the best way possible. The whole concept of a curator was originally just to be someone who cared for artwork. I have become an absolute geek about outdoor gear in the past couple of years. When I was working on this sketchbook, I realized how much I loved drawing my stuff. And so when I scanned these into Procreate, it was a huge game changer for me. Back in the day, when I was living in Kansas City and participating in the art scene there, I was definitely a very kind of city slicker, artist, curator, ghoul boss kind of vibe. And everything changed for me when I got COVID. I mean, are any of us the same as we were before COVID? Anyway, I got COVID and that ended up turning into long COVID for me. I got it at work back in December of 2021. And why am I telling you this? Well, if it weren't for getting COVID, I don't know that I would have fallen in love with the outdoors in the same way that I did. I have an autoimmune condition, so being immune compromised, I was super scared of the panorama when it first started. And when I moved in with my partner and we started hiking all around California, in between when we could, I fell in love with this world that I felt like was just hidden in plain sight from me for so long. When I got COVID, I was out of work for like a month. It was rough. I had incredible burning lungs, tachycardia episodes, incredible fatigue and brain fog. But what's wild to me is how once I got back to work, everyone just moved on like it was totally fine and this wasn't bad. What the? Living with long COVID has meant that I've had to change a lot of the ways that I've lived my life. It's one of the main reasons why I became a self-employed artist and why I'm trying to figure out how to make this thing right here work. But one of the biggest things for me was going outside and being in nature. That was a place I didn't feel like I had to mask. I wear a mask everywhere I go, still, in 2024. I mean, everywhere I go. If I'm going to the grocery store, the coffee shop, running onto the train, just that little layer of protecting myself has allowed me to get back slightly more into society in ways that I otherwise felt like I had been shut off from for quite a long time. Being in nature is one of the places where I feel like not only can I be the most authentic version of myself now, but I also feel like I've discovered my inner kid, the kid that loved to play outside and be out in nature. That was a place where, you know, the particles would diffuse and I could be safe. And I feel like that childlike sense of wonder can come back to me when I'm out on hikes. That's why I made this zine. Eventually, I want to start leading creative retreats. So I want to own a retreat center. That is like long game. I think about buying land in Humboldt County, living with a bunch of my friends on the land, and being able to build a sustainable community where we can do things like help each other raise families and help support one another through mutual aid. Someday that will happen, but right now I started to think about how do I take that dream of the retreat center and put it into something that is very small that you could have and test it out for yourself. I'll be walking you through the process of how I made this, the sketches that inspired them, and why I made it in the first place. Okay, so this right here is the printer that I used for making the zine. It is the cheapest printer that I could buy at Target, so don't go out thinking that you have to have a really expensive printer in order to make a zine. But I use the Epson Workforce WF2850, and it takes these little ink cartridges. And the biggest thing that I learned doing this zine is that these ink cartridges don't print much of anything. When one cartridge, you will get maybe 100 to 150 sheets printed, and that's not really great when you're making a zine. So I realized that my printer itself actually came with these remanufactured ink cartridges, and they were the extra large version. So I went online and found the remanufactured multi-pack. I needed to install a firmware update on this printer in order to get the prints to not have any kind of weird lines in them, but overall turned out great. I made about 50 copies of the zine, which means there were 4 pages per zine, and I made about 50 copies, so about 200 pages that I printed both sides on this printer, and I used less than 25% of one of these extra large cartridges. So highly recommend going with one of these. If you are looking at printers and you want to do zines a lot, I might stray away from an inkjet printer like this, plotting ink onto the paper, and something like a laser printer, because you will get more bang for your buck when it comes to printing. Now this is also where I scanned my zines. So I just used this top scanning bed, put the sketchbook in like so, and then just closed it up. But the thing to note about this is that it's really great for scanning black and white, but it is pretty terrible for scanning color. So I'm looking into getting a better scanner for scanning my sketchbooks, but this was really great for just a simple black and white line drawing. So a couple of supplies that I think were really essential in making this zine come together is, first off, a bone folder. I got this as a gift from my friend Kate. It is an amazing printmaking tool that allows you to fold really nice, gorgeous creases of paper. I'll show you a quick example here using a little Post-it note. And normally when I fold, I want to fold using, say, my fingers, so then I'll press down, and then I have to go in with my nail and try and carve that out. Kind of looks like that. But if I use the bone folder instead, I can fold exactly how I want it folded, and I can actually take this and just use it to quickly press. And this is a lot more ergonomic in my hand, and it just made the whole process of folding so many sheets of paper a lot easier, and then it didn't give a weird indentation. Sometimes when I fold with my nail, it creates this like ridge kind of thing happening here, but not folding with my nail and folding with the bone folder, I didn't end up with that little ridge. Another thing that I needed to make this come together, aside from my scanner and my printer, was this stapler. This is a deli stapler, and what's great is with a traditional stapler, you can't quite get deep enough into the page in order to staple it. It only goes to here. So I had actually watched a video online about how to unlatch this stapler, and then you could use an eraser, take it out of the packaging, and staple a zine together like this by laying it flat on the eraser and then stapling it directly in like so. The only difficulty with doing it this way is that you then have to fold each edge over, and that is extremely time consuming. This guy was only 12 bucks. So what I love about it is that I can lay it down, and then I can set this bar right here for the exact spot that I want to staple. And when I was stapling, I had a little bit of a method to my madness, and I'll show you on this zine. So I want to make sure that when I'm stapling down, that it actually is going to put the staple there. And that was a little tricky to do. So I had a test zine that I used for all of my staple practice. So once I got the stapling exactly right and I had it in my hand, then it was really easy to just move with this deli stapler and go staple, staple, staple. And it made the whole process so much easier, so much faster, and it made it just fly by, and I felt like a total production wizard. So highly recommend. So what I have here is the original file for creating the Creative Retreat zine. And I had lots of layers, so I'll start out with the cover. So I actually, instead of cutting this out and redrawing this, I scanned in this sketch that I'll show you here. And then once I had the sketch scanned in, I actually just used an effect called multiply in order to turn it from being this like black and white sketch to actually blending in to the piece. I hand wrote each of these letters, and when I handwrite my letters, I always just use the script and pick black, and then I can make it look. It's kind of my signature font for both YouTube and for anything that I write, is just using script in my own handwriting. And once I got a rough version of how I wanted this to look, what I did is I printed off each page. I exported this as a PDF to my computer. I printed off each page, and then I kind of doctored it all up. And that is what allowed me to make this test zine, where I just glued all of the pieces together, and I created these different labels. So I would say, okay, this is page 1, this will be side A, the cover, and this will be side B. So that way I could actually start splitting it into pages, all here using this test zine. So this was all just glued together, and it also allowed me to really see what was not visible enough printed, how I wanted to lay out this kind of back section, and it helped me realize like, hey, I need to rewrite these because the scan wasn't very clear. So I had my side A and my side B, and with this one, I was actually handwriting most of this text using my Apple Pencil and one of my favorite brushes. I was actually using brushes from the True Grit Texture Supply Color Mark pack. The brush tip solid was doing a solid in looking like let's go where we are. It looked pretty close. So I was using the Chromograph brush pack to kind of clean everything up and make it the most legible possible, and then slowly erasing the original. And I did that meticulously on each of these here in Procreate, and it was really gratifying. When I made this test zine, to really get perfect, and this is, you can see all the places that I messed up stapling as I was testing and figuring it out. But I could also do things like write that I needed to make this section darker. And I think here I found a page that I wanted to actually move. Yeah, so like this, I needed to move over. And this is where I got in a fight with my printer and it misprinted and then got print ink everywhere. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you a tour of this zine so that way you can see it in detail. Again, the purpose is to create your own creative retreat, hiking or backpacking. So it could be as simple as loading up a day pack and heading out on your favorite local trail, or it could be as complex as figuring out what backpacking gear you need uniquely and heading out on your first overnight backpacking trip. So the first page, we have the 10 essentials. So things like navigation, making sure that you have light, knowing how to read a map, especially if you don't have something like a GPS, smartwatch, battery pack for your devices, if you're relying on those, and then a satellite phone or communication device. Pro tip, if you're using an iPhone 14 or newer, it actually comes with its own satellite communication capabilities that are just built in, and you'll see a little satellite symbol when you are in the backwoods. That service is probably something that's going to cost money in the future, but for now, it's free. Next up, there is a light. So thinking about a headlamp or batteries, headlamps are so valuable and so worth it. So definitely something to consider. Sun protection, got to make sure you have some sun protection, so something like a sun hat or sunscreen. And then first aid, always have your first aid kit. I'll kind of show you that a little later. Making sure you have a knife. This is a knife that my partner did a lot of research to find. It is a type of knife for kind of bushcraft, so you can actually score wood and create little fire starters with it, which is pretty nice. Thinking about fire, how to start a fire, your fire starter, lighter, and if you're going to bring matches, make sure that they're in a waterproof case. Shelter. Even if you are going out on just a day hike, it's good to have an emergency shelter with you and know how to use it. Things like extra food and water will really come in handy, especially if you are like me and you decide to push a little bit further on a hike and go further than you should. And things like your extra clothes, so that way you've got a rain jacket, extra layers, and layers to take off in case it's going to be a hotter day. Next up, we have more on navigation. So I have a little battery bank for my watch that I use for navigation, and this runs on solar, which is really cool, but it's good to remember to have some kind of a real map. So I'll show you the sketchbook page of this here. And so I scanned this into Procreate. I actually had to rewrite some of the text because it wasn't as legible through my scanner. And then I also in the sketch, I want to talk about the fact that we had multiple maps. So we had a standard park map, a Caltopo map printout of the backpacking zones, and this was for our Joshua Tree backpacking trip that I have another video on here. And then this was the USGS zone map for specifically the backpacking zones we were going to be in, and that we kept inside of a Ziploc bag with a pencil, so that way we could write on it for notes for our next trip. This is also a traditional type of compass that allows you to be able to navigate your way using a map and a compass in the backcountry when these things stop working, which just prepare for them to fail. Just do it. Next up, this is the first drawing that actually inspired this whole series of sketches, and thinking about my gear and everything that I strapped to my back on my first day of backpacking. This was my backpack. Then thinking about water. I'm going to quickly show here what these two spreads look like in their actual sketchbook. So water on the trail, making sure that you have a water filter. Iodine tablets, they taste really gross, but they're good to have to make sure that you don't get some kind of waterborne illness, and a water bottle. A lot of times when you're going out in the backcountry or you're backpacking, you're not bringing all of your water with you. I was in a unique position backpacking for the first time in Joshua Tree, where I brought all of our water, but in situations where you're going out and you know there's going to be access to water, having a little water filter like this Sawyer one is really great. All right, next up, we've got home, so clothing and shelter. I use these little bags from Bagoo for all of my clothing, and what I love about them is they double as an excellent pillow. They're very comfortable to sleep on. So I really like these. They're just like they're nylon packing cubes, and they have smiley faces on them, which are very cute. And then I have my sleeping bag, my Thermarest sleeping pad. This thing is awesome. It's super warm and very comfortable even on hard ground. Our tent that fits in this tiny little bag with our tent stakes and our magical quick dry towels. That really helps you feel at home. Now, with all of these things, notice how these tents, they don't necessarily have something like a footprint. So keeping something like a tarp or Tyvek with you will help keep your tent, especially if it's a lightweight backpacking tent, from ripping on the ground. So having that as your surface floor. And then another thing to remember is that this tent is held up by my trekking poles. So I don't actually need as much hardware. So it's actually much smaller. Then bathroom stuff, aka a drop kit for toiletries. I have another nylon bag from Baggu. Mine has sunflowers all over it, but I didn't draw them here to keep it simple. And things like more SPF, a toothbrush, an inhaler if you're like me. I put all of my toiletries inside of little paint containers, so that way they were easy to travel with. So those are there. And then floss, toilet paper, floss, toothpaste. I'll go ahead and show you what this looks like on the sketch. As well, you'll notice here you can see here on the original sketch, I also have face wipes, making sure that you have backpacking toilet paper that you should pack out, and also a garden knife. All right, things to eat. This is our kitchen. So I'll show you the first two original sketches of these. They were not originally together like this. They were on two separate pages, so I'll let you take a look at that. Here I have coffee cups, a blender bottle, love keeping some good protein powder on me, things for a lighter, matches in a waterproof case, backpacking stove, collapsible cutlery, coffee filter right here, the isopropyl fuel tank, and a little collapsible pot. And these, known as the mess kit, all fit inside of a little mesh bag that went inside this bare canister that was strapped to the bottom of my partner's pack. So inside of this bare canister was anything stinky. So we actually would take things like our face wipes or our shampoo, conditioner, toothpaste out of our bags and put it inside this bare canister to keep any animals from being in our tent. And this would usually get put between 100 and 200 feet away from where we set up camp at night. So all the cooking would happen far away from where we were actually sleeping to keep us safe. So power bars, an important one, making sure you have coffee. We really like to drink tea at night, so we brought lots of tea, instant mashed potatoes, dehydrated meals. I can definitely share more about how I made these dehydrated meals. I made them all myself because the ones from REI are very expensive, and I didn't want to spend $300 on dehydrated backpacking food over a weekend, so I did some myself. And then hot sauce, very important. Electrolyte packs. I am a liquid IV fiend, and then high calorie trail mix. This will keep you going in those little moments. If you were modifying this for just a day hike, I would say something like power bars, liquid IV, or some kind of electrolyte mix that you like, and then a high calorie trail mix and sandwiches. I'll put a link down below to my favorite Pinterest recipe that I found for a chickpea smash sandwich that I eat out on the trail. All right, next up, first aid kits. My partner is, in a way, these drawings, and I'll show you the sketchbook here too. In a way, these drawings were a love letter to my partner's hyper preparedness. I always love that he's making these. He would always spend his weekends kind of simplifying all of our gear and creating these fun little tiny Ziploc bags where we would have all of our little first aid, so that way we could take it from one of these nylon zip bags like this one I have from Baggu and just toss it in our bag and be ready to go. So let's go over what we see here. So I've got my nylon zip bag with a whistle attached to it. I have a book on wilderness survival and a first aid manual, and both of these had little tabs and notes in them so that way we could survive in an emergency. I've got a poncho, the medi bag, which we'll go into in this page, paracord, some new shoelaces, an extra inhaler, my headlamp, and extra batteries for the headlamp. Now, before you go out on your trip, make sure you check to make sure that your headlamp the batteries have not gone bad. That happened to me, and I ended up having to clean this out using a rubbing alcohol pad. All right, to the medi bag. I've got my plastic storage bag, some cleansing wipes, bandages, signal mirror, nitrile gloves, triple antibiotic ointment, DEET wipes, a nail clipper. This is so stinking essential. Emergency blanket, Swiss Army knife, gauze, blister covers, anti-nausea, allergy medicine, pain relief, suntan lotion, nail clippers, knife, etc. Little gouache kit. This is what I actually bring when I go out. So my paints, which I all will put down in the description below, the different brushes I use, like a filbert, an angle shader, 20-0 round, a liner, paper towels, and my collapsible cup, and then my art kit for hiking and backpacking that I had a whole video on, and I'll actually be doing a review of this kit in a couple of months. I've done some changes to it already, but I want to really refine it and make it as good as possible before I talk about it again. A sitting pad, my art kit, and it actually fits down to about 10 inches by 7.5 inches. Water-based brush pens, alcohol markers, and my sketchbook all fit inside of there, as well as an X-Acto blade for sharpening, and that's one of the retractable ones, some colored pencils, and some wax pastels. This last page I think is so stinking cute. It's where I have the prompts. I have the prompts for everybody to do things like start by drawing some blobs. Set a timer for yourself and actually block in that time for spontaneous creativity into the time you plan for your hike. Thinking tiny and get really close. I love to sometimes actually do some writing and get really, really close to an item or an object and take notes about what I see, and then start to list those observations and focus on the details in the drawing. Then taking a color inventory, noticing the colors that are present all around you. And that's actually how I developed my backpacking kit of supplies, is by doing this exact thing. There is a little QR code link that I put here too, because on my Substack, I am going to be doing more prompts like this. So if you're interested in that, my Substack is free to sign up for, but the prompts will be at the paid tier, which is only $5 a month. So if you want to get a little lesson from me every month, you can do that in the link below. Then also over here we have the pack checklist. So things like basics, apparel, snacks, art kit, first aid, everything that was here in these pages is also right here, and you can download the Notion version yourself right there. Yeah, so that's it. Hope you liked hearing about me creating a zine. If this all sounded awesome, thank you so much for watching till the end. In the next video, I am going to talk about what my experience was doing my first art pop-up, aka art market, at Creative Communal Artisan Market in Berkeley, California. So if you want to hear about that, definitely hit that subscribe button down below so you can hear about it right when it comes out. You should leave me a comment if you are considering doing art or makers markets as an artist and you have questions about the setup, the fees, the permitting, the stuff. I would love to answer those in that next video, so you can leave those down below. All right, farewell. You should click on this thing right here to subscribe, and this thing right here for another video. Bye.